welcome back to another episode of Taboo Tea Time with Kai, where we dive into the tough taboo conversations needed to heal and grow into the beautiful humans we were meant to be. So today we have a truly special guest joining us, and her name is Candice Ramsey. Candice is a personal growth coach dedicated to helping people, especially women, overcome self-doubt, break free from the fear of judgment, and just learn how to prioritize themselves unapologetically. She's also a certified Reiki practitioner and an Army veteran, bringing a unique perspective to her work through her own experiences in leadership, authenticity, and healing. And as we all know, in a world that often asks Black women to give endlessly while carrying the weight of so many expectations, Candice's work is just a call to action. Stop overgiving, start receiving, and step into your power. Her message truly aligns with Taboo Tea Time's mission to help women unlearn the patterns that no longer serve us and just build a life rooted in self-love and empowerment. So today we're just going to explore how to hear your inner voice amid life's lifing and chaos and recognize and overcome limiting patterns and embrace balance in relationships. But first, we're going to get to know a little bit about the woman behind the work, her story, her journey, and the why that fuels her mission. So let's get into it. Candice, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah, I am as well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. So let's jump right into it. So I know that your mission focuses on helping others like uncover their why and the behind the thoughts and behaviors of what they do. So what was really that defining moment for you in your life that sparked the passion for guiding others into in this way?
Yeah. Yeah. So I started doing the work that I do because I was the woman that I serve right now. Right. So I help a lot of women who maybe feel misunderstood, they feel overlooked, they might feel undervalued. And I felt a lot of these things in my career as a corporate consultant. Um, you spoke to it just a moment ago of how many things that I've done and spaces I've worked in. And when I was in the corporate world before I stepped out into full-time entrepreneurship, I felt this lingering feeling of, oh, I'm working so much harder than everybody else. I felt like I always had to take my computer home at night and all of the things. And I was like, what is going on? And then I had a lot of the things we're going to talk about today, self-doubt and all these feelings of, am I enough? And it came to a breaking point for me where I just was tired of feeling like it was so much easier for everybody else. I had this comparison thing going on, which, we have often. And
Absolutely.
I was like, Candice, something has to give. And then a piece of my work was um, a lot of the personality assessments that I do with women in organizations because I was an organizational development consultant. And then I started to realize, girl, this is not you. you know and
Yeah.
so it's not anything wrong with you. And that was kind of a turning point for me where I started to shift my mindset. I started to work with coaches, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I love that. I can definitely relate to. I'm not in the corporate world. I actually work for a
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit, but I definitely feel even with that, like we are a small team that I work for,
Mm-hmm.
and I definitely see myself like taking my laptop home, making sure that I want to show up. One, I want to show up as my best, and I think that we all feel that feeling, but I definitely am like, no, but I got to prove something, especially because I feel like for me, I live in Orange County. It's a predominantly white
Yeah.
environment, and just showing up as not just Kyler but like as the Black woman, like there's just so much pressure to do that and excel in that. So I hear you, girl.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you said proving yourself. And, earlier in your introduction, you said something about unlearning things. And,
Awesome.
that's really at the foundation of what we experience is, trying to prove ourselves or feeling like we have to prove ourselves,
Yeah.
um, to other people.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah, I definitely experienced that so much. So I kind of mentioned in my intro, but like as a veteran, like I know you've probably experienced so many unique challenges and transitions that may have shaped your perspective on personal growth and self-discovery. Like, can you just tell me about like how was that time in the military and like how did that really influence your approach to helping others uncover their why?
That's a really interesting question because I've never actually thought about how being in the army tied into my approach to personal development. But now that I'm thinking about it, now that you asked that question, the military is very regimented, and so everybody, you don't really have to have that sense of self-discovery or that um individuality. You're expected to do things in a certain way. And so I think that probably was the start of me not knowing exactly how I want to show up in the world or what unique things make me special and my unique contribution to the world. Because I joined the military when I was 18 years old,
Okay.
right? There's not a whole lot of self discovery that happens prior to the age of 18. I mean, you have things, you're exploring life as a high schooler and as an adolescent, but you don't really know yourself until, you get a little bit older. This may be, an unpopular opinion, but I think, beyond the age of 28, I'm thinking we don't really start to discover ourselves until maybe our mid 30s,
Yeah, I'm
truly.
still pretty clueless. I would
Yeah.
pretty, I would, I would say
Yeah.
yes.
So, I feel like I didn't have those foundational years in my 20s to really discover who I was and my unique contribution to the world. And so when I left the military and I entered into the corporate world, then I'm entering into a space with people who have been doing that work since their 20s.
Mm,
Right. And so it's like they had the space and the opportunity to kind of, carve their path or as much as they could, you know, at that age and at that time. And so to an extent, I feel like I was probably a little bit behind,
mm.
some of my colleagues and some of my peers. And I felt like I had to work extra hard to kind of catch up and figure things out. And so I think that it actually does really shape the way I view personal development and personal growth, because I am very hardcore focused on leveraging our unique strengths. That's the reason why I named my company Mahogany, actually.
Mhm.
I know that a lot of people I talk to, they think I named it Mahogany because I'm a Black woman, and they think that mahogany represents strength and resilience, and it does. But it also represents beauty and uniqueness and rarity. And that's how I see everybody that I work with, and friends, family alike.
I love that because I feel like it can be very tough to just see why you are unique and like why you
Mhm.
are, just like that self-discovery that you talk about. I think those things can sometimes be hard when you're just like looking in the mirror and it's like, why me? Or you get an opportunity, it's like, why me? Like, why not you?
Why
There's those
not?
things that we should be asking ourselves, but you get so caught up in like the roles and the role you play in, whoever's lives that it can be so hard to just kind of like sit with yourself and be like, yeah, it is me. Like I'm that boss, and sometimes you need someone to like just kind of check you and be
Yeah.
like, yeah, you
Yeah.
girl.
Indeed. Have you ever had somebody kind of ask you a question of, when they ask you, what are some opportunities for improvement that you have? And we can kind of like rattle these things off, but then they're saying, well, what do you excel at and what are you strong at? And we're like, and we have to think a little bit harder about it.
Right.
Like, let's flip that.
Yeah.
Let's flip
Yeah,
that and let's think about,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it can be hard to just say that you're good at something because then you don't want to come off as bragging, but there's a way to do it where
Yes.
there's a sense of confidence that you feel in knowing that like it took me forever to say like I'm a marketing professional because I was
Yeah.
like I'm just a marketer, like a professional. That was like ooh, that felt like uncomfortable for me, but I was like no, but this is this may not be the calling, but I'm good at this. God has given me a gift in this. So like I
Mhm.
should stand firm in that. So it's definitely, it can be tough, but it's so worth it once you finally get to that point of feeling confident in who you are and who you're becoming and the personal growth that you're doing.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're working with clients, how do you help them feel confident about being, their true selves, especially when it feels like society is telling them, everything opposite of that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really glad that you asked that question because I would say there's two things that are really, really important to leaning into feeling confident to be their authentic self. And the first one is self compassion,
Mhm.
right? You have to um, really have an acceptance for where you are, the journey that you're on, and the person that you're striving to become. Because we can go from I'm not this. And then it can spiral into all kinds of negative self talk of, like you waited too late and, comparison and societal expectations and all the stuff. So have a little bit of self compassion, a lot of self compassion, and just know that you are exactly where you are supposed to be. And your journey is unfolding just the way that it's supposed to unfold. So, self compassion is a big piece of it. And then the other piece is it's all about self awareness. Confidence or lack of confidence is rooted in us not being able to lean into the things that we're really, really strong in, right? And so if we're telling ourselves these thoughts of, I'm going to go back to your example, like marketing professional, like that's the highest of the high to say that I'm a professional.
Yeah.
And if we're telling ourselves these things, it's slow. It's like a meter, if you think about it, like we're slowly draining our confidence away.
Yeah.
But then we lean into the fact that I've been doing marketing for a while and I'm really good at this. Even if you just pull out little things like little pieces of what marketing means and say, I am excellent at this, right? My ability to take somebody's idea and turn it into messaging, like that's the thing that, that's my jam. That's what I rock out with. Those are the things that's picking your meter up. And so when I'm working with a client, I help them shift their language that they say to themselves.
Yeah.
Um,
Perfect one.
and really just lean into the things about themselves that brings them spark and joy. Sometimes when people talk about the things that they know inherently that they're strong at or the things that they really excel at, you can see a glow on their face. And
Yes.
it's like when I see that, yes, yes, let's do more of that. And it helps build your confidence one small step at a time.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that so much because that positive self-talk and like that is a game changer because I feel that I have done so much of that as we all have. But I think especially when I became a mom, that oof, like the amount of like, am I going to be good at this? Am I good at this? Oh, you're like, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing this. And like, instead of leaning into those moments where it's like, look how gently you talk to him, or like, look at that moment where you didn't like get mad because he threw your cell phone across the room. Like, just those things that I feel like I've been slowly trying to get into when it comes to, uplifting myself and building that confidence. Like, yes, there are some moments where you have absolutely no idea what you're doing, but you're still doing it. You're still leaning into the things that you do know how to do and, being confident in that. So that is definitely such a huge part of it. Talking to yourself nicely will change it all.
Absolutely. And I love that you said something here a moment ago of, yeah, you didn't do that perfectly, but here are some things. And it's not about, and I don't want any of your listeners to think that it's toxic positivity when you give yourself positive affirmations. It's
Mm,
about reframing the
right.
way that we think about things, right? And instead of looking at an all or nothing, like I'm either a success or a failure, let's look at some of these things as like opportunities to learn and opportunities to grow. It's like being a mom, we don't know what we're doing when we first become moms, but it's like I have an opportunity to learn from this, right? And I'm becoming a better mom every single day, and societal expectations and what our parents and grandparents and our aunts and our friends and everybody else tells us, sometimes even though it's well-intended advice, those are the spaces where limiting beliefs come from for us. And we
Yeah.
just have to know, we have to thank them and say, thank you for this. And, I'm
Right.
growing and I'm learning. And those are the things that help us build real, true, sustainable confidence.
Yeah. And honestly, relationships too, because I feel like even with that, like I think when I became a mom, it made me really realize of like how much I'm just gonna say pushback I had to be willing to give, but in a respectful way, but
Mhm.
like also letting people know that like I'm a young mom, and so I feel like they still see me as young, and
Yeah.
I want them to have the confidence to know that like all the things that you instilled in me, like be confident in that because like I am a lot of that, but I'm also growing into my own person, and I will have moments where I don't agree respectfully, and I will continue to move how I want to move and how I see fit. But being, confident in my own decisions and how I was also raised to know that there are some things I'm going to take and there are some good things I'm going to throw away, and that's okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is okay. All of it.
Yeah. So I saw one of your YouTube videos was how to stop overgiving and start receiving in relationships. So I love everything about that topic. What are some, let's just start with like what are some common signs of overgiving and how do individuals start to really shift towards a more balanced dynamic?
Yeah. Yeah. I love this topic as well. So I'm glad that I'm glad that that's one that you brought up. But some signs of overgiving, if you struggle with saying no, I know a lot of people really struggle with saying no. Another common sign is when you when you have a give receive interaction, or I'll say a give interaction, and after that interaction, you know we experience things in our body. We have somatic signs that'll tell us that something is not feeling really great for us. And so if we're in a give interaction and after that we feel just unease, or something just like in the pit of your stomach that's almost telling you my cup is running low, you're probably an overgiver, and then you have to pause and you really have to think about it. And then, there's times where you instinctively say yes when you really want to say no. In the back of your mind, you're like, I really don't want to do this. I really don't feel like doing this. But what comes out of your mouth is, yes, of course, or I'll be there, or call me anytime. You might be an overgiver if some of those things come up.
Yeah. And I guess how do you find the balance between that and like things you just have to do? Like, I'm tired and I don't want to do this, but like I have to do this because like it's for my child or it's for my partner. Like, where does that come in? How can you kind of tune into that where whether it's like, yes, I'm overgiving, but I kind of have to, and maybe that's
Mhm.
not the case. I don't know. Tell me.
Yeah, I would actually not consider that a case of overgiving, because there are things that we just have to do in our lives that we don't always want to do. I think that that's a case of making sure we have healthy boundaries in place with our partners, with our parents, with our job. If we have working hours from 8 to 5, when your boss comes in or colleague comes in at 4:30 and they're like, Tyler, I have this one thing that if you could take a look at this, XYZ, and you're like, absolutely, I'm on it, I got it. I would say that's a little bit of overgiving.
Okay.
However, if at 4:30 p.m. somebody comes in and you've been working hard all day and they say, I have this one last thing, could you take a look at this before you go home today? And you say, you know what? I'd be happy to take a look at it, but let me do it tomorrow. Right now, I'm closing out my emails so that I can get out of here on time. That's putting boundaries in place.
Mm.
The same thing with our children, our home life, our spouse. If we have, I'm going to say in home life, everybody's home life is a little bit different. So however you share responsibilities and divvy up things, if it's your time to, prepare the meal or attend to the child, then it's like, I don't want to do it, but let me get up and do this. And then I can go back and, reclaim my energy and refocus myself. You have to balance it with self-care. Is what I'd say. Have good boundaries put in place and balance the things that you're doing on your day to day that you have to do, the responsibilities, with an equal amount of self care.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I also know that you've kind of discussed like tuning into that inner voice, and we kind of talked about it a little bit. Amidst just like world's chaos and lifing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you give to someone who feels just kind of disconnected from that inner voice and doesn't know where to start?
Mm. I love that question. So to reconnect with your inner voice, and I know that silence is not for everybody, but I would say if you are someone who can really embrace silence, that can be a game changer. Whether it's meditation, whether it's praying, or whether it's just taking time by yourself, right? We have our partners, we have our kids, we have our friends, our cell phones. We have so many things that's going on in our lives. It's like, it's okay to put your phone on do not disturb. It's okay to go into your bedroom and close the door. and and sometimes if the kids come busing into the bedroom, go into the bathroom or somewhere where you can find a little bit of silence or take a walk by yourself. But silence helps us tune in to um, our helpful inner voice. And we're not talking about our inner critic here, because although we want to attune to that, we want to attune to it so we can silence it and be aware of it. But our inner voice is that wisdom, it's that guidance. And so I'd say just find time for silence. And another way, if silence isn't for you, I'd tell your listeners to journal. And you can do this as just free writing. It's almost like just writing a stream of consciousness. And so you just sit down with a book and just write whatever comes to your mind. And it helps you tune into things that you might not be consciously aware of, that's guiding you and giving you wisdom.
Yeah, you just mentioned two things that are difficult for me, very difficult. I mean, well, originally, silence has now become my best friend because I listen to a lot of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and a
Yeah.
lot of Baby Shark. So
Yeah.
silence is definitely my best friend. But it's something that was really hard for me. I used to, when I would have silence or be in silence, I would put on like something in the background, whether it was like Hulu or just like Spotify or music, just to kind of almost like tune out that inner voice, because there was a part of me that was like scared of those thoughts that would come up, and whatever that looks like, whether it was good or bad. I think I just wanted to tune it out because I didn't know what would come up for me, or I was trying to avoid something probably. Um,
Mhm.
and now I think I've really started to lean into that, because ultimately I think that that voice is here, like you said, to guide me and give me wisdom. And it shouldn't be like a sense of thing that I run from. So has is I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because it is so, and I love that your podcast is about talking about taboo topics that we don't talk about very often, because that is so common. And I'm glad that you said that, because there's so many women out there
Uh,
that experience that. And yeah, it's like we don't want to spend time with our thoughts because we're afraid of what we may hear, what we may find out, what our voices may tell us.
Mm.
But that's the entire reason why we need to tune into our inner voice. It's there to guide us and give us a little bit of perspective. And, we'll start to get clarity on things that we may not have so much clarity around. I've seen this very, very common with my friends when it comes to relationships.
Mm.
And I'm also a marriage and family therapist. And so I've had, clients sit in my office, and you have no idea how many times people are afraid of sitting with themselves to figure out if the relationship that they're in is the relationship that they should be in,
Yeah.
because they have, whether it's, fear of being alone, or fear that there's not anything better out there, and all of these other things that we tell ourselves. We don't want to sit in that silence. We don't want to hear, our inner truths.
Yeah. Because then when we do get the clarity, then we have to act on it.
We
Or
have
we
to act on it.
don't. Or we don't, and then we just know that we're sitting in somewhere we shouldn't be, you know?
And
Yeah.
then we start to judge ourselves,
Right.
because then we're like, I know because I've told myself this, and I know my body is telling me, everything is telling me that this is a bad situation, and I'm not acting on it. And then we start to judge ourselves, and it just spirals from there. That's never a good space to be in.
Yeah. So, for individuals who are dealing with self-confidence issues and that fear of judgment that we're just kind of talking about, what are the first steps to what does it take to identify and overcome those limiting patterns?
Yeah. I think one of the first steps is to acknowledge that, not necessarily that you have the limiting patterns, but to acknowledge that you're in a space where the only other option is change. Like,
Mhm.
you have to get to a space where you're just like, I don't like feeling like this anymore, or I don't like these patterns or these behaviors that aren't getting me to the other side of where I want to be.
Mhm.
And so that's the first step. You have to acknowledge it. And then I'd say the first action step that you can take is, and I love journaling, and I know that it's not for everybody. I have a ton of clients, they're like, Candice, stop telling me to journal because I don't like it. But start to write down. What I tell people to write down is, when you are in a situation where maybe some self-doubt might be creeping in, or maybe some fear might be creeping in, just, you can do this in a multitude of ways. If you have a paper and a pen nearby, then you can journal like that. Or we all have our cell phones nearby us somewhere. We can leave ourselves a voice memo and say, I want to do this thing, but my fear of judgment is starting to creep in. And just note what things are going on for you, what emotions are rising, what thoughts you're telling yourself, what behavior you might be tempted to take. So I think a lot of it is just making note for yourself, so that you can start to recognize patterns, because you can't change things that you're not aware of.
Mm. Yeah, that leads me into what I was going to talk about, because that self-awareness is such a big part of it. I think once for me, I remember this one time, this friend told me I wasn't accountable. I thought I was like, whoa, rude. But I feel like it changed my life in a sense, because I was like, oh, like I'm not. And then I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, I'm going to be just the most accountable person ever. But no, but really understanding that, okay, why do you think that?
Mm-hmm.
How do I change that? Do I feel like that is really obviously true to like myself? And I was like, yep, you're
Mm-hmm.
not accountable. So moving on from then, just coming into that self-awareness, like, okay, what do I now do? And what comes up for me when I don't want to be accountable? Is it fear, or is it guilt? Is it shame? Is it any of these things? And like, why don't I act in this way? And I feel like that self-awareness is really just part of me starting this podcast and really talking about the topics that I do, is just that self-awareness. Like, this is what's arising for me. And like, how do I move past this? Is anybody else going through this? I'm pretty sure you are. Like, let's talk about it, because I feel like I said, that self-awareness can also just sometimes be scary where you have to look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, yeah,
Hmm.
this is probably an issue that I need to solve. And, in order to get to the best version of myself, in order to get to the person that I want to be, I'm gonna have to face this. And that can be
Yeah.
hard.
You're talking about something that is, I want to ask you, this individual was probably a trusted friend, right? This was probably somebody that you're close with. Yeah. The reason why I wanted to point that out is because it's really difficult to reflect on things like that if we don't have a system around us of, I think community is so important, and it doesn't have to be a massive community. It can be somebody who, we love, somebody that we know loves us, and them pointing these things out. And I think that a lot of time, um, if we don't have that type of person in our lives, it could be a little bit hard for us to sit back and reflect, unless it gets to a point where we're starting to identify our own patterns, right? If we
Right.
continue to do things that don't serve us, then we can say, wait, is it me? Let
Yeah.
me start to check out, is it me? Or, are these things, is this just like a sequence of things not going well in my life? But the fact that we can have somebody in our lives that says, you're not showing a lot of accountability right now, or, I heard how you talk to that person, and, you're not communicating in the healthiest ways possible. And, when people start to point things out to us, then we can kind of take a look at it. But self-awareness requires not just introspection, but it requires us to be introspective. It requires us to have some type of third party, whether it's a friend, a family member that we trust has our best interests at heart, a coach, a therapist, like somebody that's outside of ourselves to point out things that we can't see.
Yeah, I've definitely now, like I've tried to like surround myself and through a weeding out process, but to surround myself with people that I know are honestly just gonna call me out and also support me and empower me and all of those things too. But making sure that I remember even when I first got a therapist, like I remember telling her, like, I want to make sure that this isn't just like a place where I come and vent and like those things, but I also want to make sure that you call me out on my stuff when I need to be called out because I
Absolutely.
feel like that's the point, and I want to make sure that I'm surrounding myself with people who are going to support me in that way because
Mhm.
ultimately we're all trying to win. And if I win, I'm going to bring people with me. So I want to make sure that I'm continuing to make sure that I'm working on being the best person possible.
Absolutely. And the weeding out process is so incredibly important. So I'm glad that you said that.
Yeah.
Yes, we do need people around us that really want to empower and support us, but we have to make sure that they're the right people.
Right, exactly, exactly. So, as a certified, is it Reiki? Is that how you say it?
Yes, that is how you say it, Reiki.
Reiki practitioner. How do you integrate like energy healing into like your coaching sessions and what benefits have you observed?
Yeah. So Reiki is really good for stress management. It's really good for relaxation. It has other benefits like health benefits as well for like chronic pain and those types of things. But the way that I use Reiki with my clients, I don't typically use it with my individual clients. I typically will use it in a workshop.
Gotcha.
And so if I am having the participants release negative energy that they may be holding on to, some of the things that we talked about already, so like the fear of judgment and maybe old relationships and all of this just stale things that are essentially weighing us down. We're carrying them around like a ton of bricks. Reiki is really good for an emotional release,
Mm.
clearing out the energy, opening up, the chakras and making space for healing energy to flow through clients' bodies. So Reiki is really, really helpful for that.
And what are some of the things you notice after someone goes through that process, of even their energy, their being, and yeah.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I tend to notice is it depends on the person and it depends on how much they're carrying, but there's often a big emotional release.
Mhm.
And so I've seen a lot of tears after a Reiki energy cleanse or energy shift. Um, but then probably the second biggest thing that I notice is just a sense of mental clarity and calmness. And so as your stress levels are lowering, it makes space for clarity to come into your life because you're not all jumbled up and have all this chaos going on in your mind.
Yeah, I love that. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
like I once I saw that, I was like, oh, I have to do my research. Like, what is this? Sounds
Mm-hmm.
so awesome.
Yeah. So if you haven't, go find a Reiki practitioner and get a treatment and see how you feel.
Nice. Okay. So what, as we kind of wrap up a little bit, like what are some like upcoming project goals you're excited about? And yeah.
Yeah, lots of things that I'm really, really excited about. Launching a new program. It is called Liberation Catalyst, and this is all about overcoming limiting beliefs. And I just recently decided to launch this as an evergreen self-paced course. So I'm really excited to just put that out there in the world for people to just take at their own leisure and they don't have to join the cohort for it. Um, and yeah, more speaking engagements. I am just looking to get out into the world and talk to more people about self awareness and the Enneagram, which we didn't really talk about today, but I'm an Enneagram practitioner. And so I just love speaking about it and telling the world about it and raising the world's self awareness one person at a time.
I love that. So before we kind of end, what is one taboo topic or uncomfortable truth that you think we need to talk about in order to heal and grow as individuals or as a community?
I think the one taboo topic, and it's becoming less taboo. So I do want to give credit where credit is due, and that the world is starting to recognize how much power there is in vulnerability. I think that as women, it is taboo to be vulnerable, particularly in our professional lives. They're like, oh, she's just being a woman or oh this and oh that. No, it's okay to be vulnerable. It depends on how you are showing up in that space of vulnerability. Are we showing up from a space of this is authentically who I am and what's going on, and you look at it from a growth mindset perspective? Or are we using that vulnerability as a way of justifying why we're not doing something or how we're holding ourselves back? But vulnerability is a strength. I'm a huge advocate for people being vulnerable in the world. And I don't want that to be a taboo topic anymore for both men and women.
Absolutely.
Vulnerability is a sign of strength, it is not a sign of weakness.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I definitely I've been very blessed to just like work for an organization, one that's all women right now. We are a small team, but we are all women, and I think that's super cool. And also just being led by a leader who makes space for that.
Yes.
I definitely feel like I can be vulnerable and just authentically Kyler at my workspace, which I know is not a lot of people's reality. So I'm blessed to say that I have that space. So you're right. We have come a long way because I definitely don't think that would have been the case a while ago. So
Yes, that's wonderful. And when you do feel like you can be your authentic self in the workplace, productivity goes up, your satisfaction is higher. So many, many, many benefits. So I'm glad that you're in that space. And I hope many other women find themselves in a space where they can be their true selves at work.
yeah. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been such an amazing conversation. I learned so much. I know my listeners will learn so much as well. And you've just been a joy to have. Like you have just like a great energy about you. And I just again loved having this conversation with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. And I agree, it was such a wonderful conversation. And I just really appreciate the dialogue.
Yeah. Can you tell my listeners where to find you?
Absolutely. So I am going to say that the best place to find me is on my website, www.mahoganeycc.com, because all of my socials are at the bottom of that website. I am on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, I'm probably there. And you can find it on mahoganeycc.com.
Perfect. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Taboo Tea Time with Kai. I hope this has been a wonderful conversation for you to listen to. And just thanks for being a part of the community and joining me. So tune in next time for another episode of Taboo Tea Time with Kai, where we will be breaking the silence, embracing the uncomfortable, and transforming lives one taboo talk at a time. Bye, lovelies.